So today's program, we are delighted to have Anshul Sadana, Chief Operating Officer at Arista Networks, taking the NANOG stage. In this fireside chat, Anshul and NANOG's Elizabeth Drolet will discuss how to stay successful in today's rapidly changing environment. Anshul has more than 2 decades of relevant skills in engineering management, systems software development in the networking industry. Anshul joined Arista in 2007 and is responsible for Arista's cloud networking operations and customer advocacy worldwide. Welcome, Anshul.
Thank you, Anshul, for being here. So let's go ahead and start at the beginning. Where are you from originally?
I'm actually originally from Mumbai in India. I grew up over there, did my undergrad and so on, and then around 1999, I moved to the US.
So what has been the most influential, as you look back, moment in your career? And I know that's a hard question to answer, but what would you say in this moment that has brought you here on this stage?
Well, I would say there are 2 aspects. First of all, it's a privilege to be here. And, we've been involved in the networking community for a long time. I've been personally involved for over 20 years now. But when you're involved with something complex and there's things changing rapidly, when I look back, especially to my early days in life, childhood, growing up, and college days and so on, I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, especially organizing complex events, the annual college programs and sports competitions and so on. And to a point where we used to have about 4,000 to 5,000 attendees in some of these events that I was solely responsible for organizing, leading a team, getting that done and so on. It has nothing to do with networking or technology. But that taught me a lot on how to deal with stressful situations. Last minute there's a speaker cancellation. It's always chaos and so on. But I think that taught me a lot.
And maybe an expansion of that question, how do you handle failure? How do you handle success?
So, failures happen. You don't always get what you're looking for. And it's always a setback. So, to me personally, there's an emotional reset when you go through a failure, whether it's a small failure or a big, depending on what the event is. And I personally need a small break. Could be just an hour to just chill, just stop thinking about it, recover from that, and then move on. And then you go back and figure out, okay, what went wrong? Could we have done something differently? Could I have done something differently? There's always a learning from that. Some events you control, some you don't. But that reset is extremely important, at least for me, that you recover quickly and then you come across and you can move on. On the success side, it's very rare to find yourself in a position where you've achieved something or this milestone event that you're involved in all by yourself. There's always someone with you. There's a team at work, my wife and my kids, my family is involved. So with success, I always take the time to celebrate because you never know when the next moment comes, and it's extremely important to relish and to celebrate with the team you're involved in, and gives you a lot more enthusiasm and sort of encouragement for the next milestone you're chasing as well.
You mentioned the word reset a couple times. Do you have a morning routine?
I do. Recently I read about the 5 a.m. routine and so on. I didn't even know these things were that well documented. I have 2 kids. Our daughter's 14, our son is 10. And when the kids were born, our personal schedules just changed. So for the last 14 years, I've been getting up early in the morning, generally around 5 a.m. Sometimes it's even earlier. And I go for a long walk, at least an hour. My dad is in India, so I call him. I'll talk to him for at least 5 minutes a day, sometimes half an hour, 40 minutes, 1 hour. And that time is for everything other than work. But really helps me also focus on what is needed at work, because it's my personal time. thinking about what's needed to be done that day or that week, or something big coming up, something complex, or something with family and kids and so on. But I tell you that 1 hour in the morning is the most refreshing hour, because there's no disturbances, everything is quiet outside, you can go relax and focus and concentrate on your goals.
I like how you said that first hour in the morning is the most important. I think there's a lot of truth to that, because it really sets us up for the entire day. When you look back, what is the legacy that you would like to leave behind?
Boy, I don't think I've reached a stage or a platform where I think about the legacy I leave behind, but if there is one, I think it's the impact on the industry, on the community, on our customers, on the professional front, and on the personal front, just raising kids to be good citizens, focused, determined in their own goals. But coming back to the community, we live in the networking world, and networking is filled with interrupts you cannot predict. But despite that, there's always a business outcome or a goal or a mission that everyone's striving towards. And my personal goal is to help as many individuals and companies as possible achieve that goal, and have that impact on their businesses, where people remember how great the engagement was with me individually or with Arista.
So what has been your proudest moment of your career?
Well, at Arista, we're now a large company, over 50 billion in market cap. We have about 10,000 customers. And we've been growing, we've been doing well. But looking back to the early days and getting from a small startup, when I joined, we were about 12 engineers in the company, trying to figure out what we'll build and which customers we can cater to. And we have a great team, including Andy Bechtolsheim, our founder and chairman. But getting to that IPO and getting to a stage where we are a real company and competing with the giants of the world and delivering high quality products, I would say was truly the proudest moment so far.
How do you maintain work-life balance?
Yeah, as I was saying, networking is full of interrupts. I heard this joke recently, maybe a couple of years ago, from another network engineer, but let me ask you this. What's a group of fish called? A school of fish. Mm-hmm. What's a group of birds called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A flock of birds.
Yeah.
What's a group of network engineers called? An outage. So, it is a stressful environment we all live in. And to balance that off, you truly need something that you can take your mind off of the day-to-day routine. So in terms of work-life balance, as I mentioned, we have 2 beautiful kids. My wife is very involved in raising the kids as well. And we take time off during dinner, for example. There are no devices allowed on the table. And yes, I can get urgent calls or text messages and so on, but it can wait. In addition to that, not work from home, but work remotely. I have a lot of calls to attend, other things to do. It's actually quite possible to do this while you're also traveling with the kids, or they play squash. We go to quite a few tournaments with them and so on. And I'm able to continue working from there. So there's no hard cutoff other than dinner time. It's not like work ends at 6 p.m. and personal life starts later. It's blended together to a point where you don't feel work is stressful, because you're also able to take care of other important personal things. At the same time, spend enough time with family that you don't feel disconnected. Otherwise, I think later on, all of us in life will regret it for missing those moments when the kids have truly grown up.
Those are very wise words. What more advice do you have for future generations?
For future generations in networking, right?
Yes.
And I see this with our kids as well, but I feel there's a lot of advancement in technology. We have lots of tools, lots of apps, lots of options, and sometimes these are easy shortcuts to take. But These fundamentals you need to understand, because if the fundamentals are not strong, it's not easy to use all these latest tools and advancements to your benefit, or to really understand how things are working so that you can actually take it one step further. So my biggest advice would be, do focus on fundamentals. Whatever field you're in, it's going to help you no matter how easy or how automated, how much AI will help you, the fundamentals will still be needed.
What's your advice to older generations?
Well, I don't think older generations is just by age. I think it really comes down to, are you able to adapt to these new technologies? And many of us, we resist change in life or at work, but there's a lot that keeps changing around us. And it's extremely important to take advantage of these new technologies in one way or the other, or the new tool sets as well, and simplify our lives. The more you resist it, the harder it gets. I'm not a big believer that things like AI will come and take away our jobs. At the same time, if we don't adapt, then maybe we're not as skilled or as useful in our jobs as we could be. So that retraining of our minds, retraining of our skills is extremely important. Whether it's taking a small course or reading a tutorial online, there are many videos on YouTube, there are many, many ways to keep up, but I think it's important to do that all the time.
I like how you mentioned that. What we resist persists is how I always think of it. And especially in this industry, adapting is so crucial, and learning and consistent or continually. I know retirement is a long way off, but do you have any plans for what you're going to do when you retire?
Well, I still consider myself young, so I've not been thinking about retirement. But in terms of personal time, we love to travel as a family, and as I mentioned, our kids play squash at a competitive level. So I think between travel, hiking, which is a passion of mine, maybe more personal fitness, these are some of the goals. And I don't think they have to wait till retirement, which is really far away, but maybe there's more time at that time in the future.
Speaking of that, what are you currently working towards professionally and personally?
Well, professionally, as I mentioned earlier, a lot is changing around us, especially with AI. And I'm amazed at how much there is to learn around us. And it's getting harder and harder to keep up. So learning more about advancements in AI, what is it in the technology that drives it, and how can we shape it to our advantages in the future is extremely important. So that I'm spending a decent amount of time on that, part of work as well, but just out of personal interest. On the personal front, there are two goals. One is, I was mentioning this very close to us because we're very deeply involved with our kids playing squash, but just making them better players. And sports teaches you a lot, teaches you how to deal with failure, teaches you how to improve. And our kids are devoting a lot of time to it. So I personally am very involved in helping them become better players and how they can learn from previous games and so on. And on myself individually, just spending more time with my wife as well as personal fitness. Those are key goals I've set a few years ago, and I think it's coming along okay.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit more towards industry. How is Arista Networks changing the game in tech?
So at Arista, a lot of people, our customers, the community thinks of us as high-speed networking, which is true. We're always chasing the next generation speed. How can we get there faster? But from the inside, we're actually focused on high-quality networks, which is a slightly different focus, but extremely important. The reason networking is a little bit more complicated in terms of the impact it has is because network is so critical that an outage is directly visible. It has an impact on everyone's business or the internet, and you can't live without that. So making it higher quality and avoiding all these corner cases is a lot of work. Our software EOS is about 20-25 million lines of code now, And testing for every corner case requires a lot more thoughtful methodology to make sure you're developing software for testability. As an example, we don't do a lot of manual testing of our products. It's all automated. And keeping that going as the code gets more and more complex gets harder, but at the same time, it's not impossible. And if you're focused as that as the primary goal, you can deliver that. So continuing with next generation products, but also higher quality products is a key goal. And I think that's we're having a good impact both in data center networking and recently in campus as well.
So what advice do you have for similar companies?
Well, they should not do what we are doing. They should leave it all for us so that we can get 100% market share.
So you see future demand as being driven by 3 core sets of refresh cycles. Can you talk more about this and why it matters?
I think this is a comment from one of our recent earnings calls. The networking industry in the past was viewed as, you're on certain generation of speeds. For example, the world was at 1 gig in the late 90s, early 2000s. Then we started to upgrade to 10 gig. But that upgrade took about 10 years. And for different reasons, either the products were too expensive, there wasn't enough of a perfect match, there wasn't the right products, and so on. We went from 10 gig to 40 gig in about 4 to 5 years after that. 40 gig to 100 gig happened in about 3 to 4 years. 100 gig, while it started in 2016, 2017, is still growing as a speed. So there are still big parts of the network, big parts of the industry that is upgrading from an older speed to 100 gig. At the same time, backbones or higher speed networks inside data centers are upgrading from whatever speeds they were in the past to 400 gig. And while we're doing this, there's an upgrade to 800 gig that is just starting, especially driven by AI. So there are actually 3 speeds the world is transitioning to at the same time. So you get these 3 upgrade cycles that are layered on top of each other, rather than the previous cycles where you have something, you wait for 10 years, then you upgrade. Now the world is moving really, really fast. So it's really exciting to see that rapid pace of change coming to the industry and everyone adopting these new technologies really, really quickly.
So with that rapid change, what will be their biggest challenges our community will be facing? Presently and in the future?
Yeah, I think networks are getting larger and larger. So the complexity of managing large networks is one dimension where, in the past, we have customers in the financial industry, in banking and so on, where for every one network engineer, they could manage about 100 switches or routers. We have cloud customers where if you look at the ratio of network engineers to number of devices, switches and routers they manage, pretty much mostly automated, but you still have a few people on rotation or PagerDuty. It's about 1 engineer for every 100,000 switches or routers. But now we're running into customers with install bases of 1 million switches or more deployed in their production networks. That's a different order of complexity that you have to tailor your tools and your monitoring and the self-healing to. I think that's one dimension coming soon, so we all have to prepare for that. The other one, just given the drive for higher speed, which also consumes higher power and more cooling requirements, I think there is a worry about one, impact on the climate with all the higher need for energy. And second, in the past, data center companies, colos, and so on were looking for the best spot in the market to give you access for the lowest rate of electricity with redundant grids and so on. But in the future, in the near future, it's going to be not just about electricity, but it's also going to be where can you find enough water to cool the devices, the GPUs and the related technology, because liquid cooling is coming in the next few years as well. I think those are some evolving challenges we'll have to address.
It's compelling. What do you think specifically to this industry? What changes were we going to see in 5 years and then 10 years?
Well, in the past, we could have dreamt of answering these questions. But the world is changing really fast. The last 12 months with AI has been so crazy that 24 months ago, I don't think anyone could have predicted how quickly this change is coming to us and happening. So just predicting the next 3 to 5 years is already tough. I think we can predict directionally. It's very hard to predict timing of these things. But directionally, we are seeing data centers getting larger and larger. We're seeing clusters, especially driven by AI, getting larger and larger. And I was in a very surreal meeting a few weeks ago with one of our customers talking about a very large GPU cluster. And this is an architecture that will go live by 2027. And you're in that meeting having the discussions on how the network can be built and the placement of devices and the routing requirements, the latency requirements, the offload requirements. And after the meeting, it hits you that that was the future. It'll just take 3-4 years to build the products and for our customers to deploy it and get there. But I think it's happening. So the networks will certainly get much, much larger. The one other requirement we are seeing, and a key learning we get is from talking to our customers directly about these topics, some of the largest cloud companies, is that they don't know what the requirements will be. So the networks are being built to be a lot more flexible so you can address the changing business needs, because there's no business team that can come and tell you or anyone today what these large language models will look like or what the training models will look like in 2 years or 3 years. They're evolving, and we don't know which model will succeed or how the research shows up. So everyone's trying to keep it a lot more flexible and adapting to these changing needs.
So you mentioned this a little bit, but how will these changes affect our community specifically?
So I think there are 2 dimensions to that. One is us as a networking community building many of these large networks, whether you're involved with a AI cluster inside your own organization, whether you're in the WAN or the routing or the backbone, because a lot of the data needs to be exchanged in and out of these facilities, or you're on the other side as a customer of AI technology, leveraging maybe some of the inference engines and so on. That's one dimension. I think all of us will have to be more involved in understanding how these data sets are being migrated, how the computation happens, and any impact to the network we support. There's a second dimension of this, which is AI coming to network operations. And for the longest of times, AI has been a great field where there's a very high promise. And I was listening to a talk by an MIT professor on this a few years ago. And he commented that, since 1979, people have been researching AI, and every year they come and say, they believe this is the year of AI. This is where it's about to happen. It will change the world. But it's been 30, 40 years in the making. Now, finally, 50 years later, I think it is happening. It is happening in many, many fields. And it's not that hard today to take a data set of, let's say, all of the outages and the reasons, putting that into a model, into a training model, getting back an outcome which starts to predict what the next issue could be based on real-time data. So I think applying AI to network operations is coming soon. It will benefit us in a big way. But to my earlier comment, we'll have to adapt. I don't think AI will be the only tool out there. I think we will be network operators, leveraging that tool, understanding how it works, understanding the deficiencies, but also taking advantage, letting it do 80-90% of the work so that we can focus on more mission-critical aspects.
So we're at a tech conference. What are the conversations we should be having during those breakout sessions?
Well, there's a lot already out there in different AI models. If you have data sets, run them through any of these models and see what you get. You'll be surprised on how strong the signals are already based on data you have. And it'll come back to, can we structure this data just slightly better? There's some level of tagging and so on that is needed for the models to tell us whether an issue is happening because of known issues or how to address it or monitoring and so on. I think that's one dimension of it. Second dimension, as I mentioned, just building large networks and supporting these large networks has a different set of problems with it. Latency is being measured in nanoseconds, and a few nanoseconds here and there or hundreds of nanoseconds has an impact on these models. The scale, building networks for 4K, 8K, 16K, 32K GPUs is a different magnitude of complexity because you can't have an outage in there. You can't bring down the cluster and then wait to recover it or reboot something a few hours later. These things are measured in seconds in terms of efficiency. I think these are sort of operational challenges we'll have to go tackle as a community as well. So I would love discussion on this topic.
Anshul, what has surprised you most about recent tech trends?
I think I already touched on this. The pace of change with AI last 12 months, the velocity with which upgrades are having. As an example, we often talk about next generation products, and we have customers of various kinds, universities, service providers, big banks, media companies, cloud companies. And the last few years, the roadmap discussions were generally with the visionaries or the architects of each of the organization on what is needed 5 years from now or 3 years from now. There's plenty of time to have that discussion. You can repeat the discussion, you can evolve it slightly every 3 months, 6 months, and so on. With AI, what's happening is not only are we talking about 800 gigabits per second, but we have customers pulling us to get to 1.6 terabit Ethernet as quickly as possible. There's already a need to get to 1.6T in these large-scale clusters, which I would not have imagined it's coming that fast. And these discussions are no longer happening with the network architects. It's happening with the AI teams that really want to get there very, very quickly. So that has been, I would say, positively shocking and surprising.
I would agree with you. So where do you get your tech information?
So I don't have any single source to get tech information, but it's really all over the place. There's industry news. We have some key partners like Intel and Broadcom and AMD that we work closely with. There's a lot that happens downstream in the ecosystem. Since everyone's become an expert in supply chain the last few years, we understand what's happening in the chip space as well. There's a lot we learn from our customer base, because our customer base, I would say individually, everyone has their own direction. But when you put all of that together, it really starts to shape what the future needs to look like in many, many ways. I'll give you an example. This is somewhat abstract because I can't share all the specific confidential details. But a few years ago, there was some feedback from key customers to one of our suppliers to change their entire roadmap a certain way. And this was around 2018, 2019. And they came to us and said, hey, we want to change our roadmap. What do you think? And we said, that's absurd. Why would you do that? That makes no sense to us. You should go a different direction. And as the discussion happened, it turned out that each of the major customers we were talking to, or they were talking to individually, had their own view, but they were not putting it together. And that would have been the wrong thing to do. But we are fortunate that we were able to put that together with them and so on. So I think that's a huge part as well. There's one individual I rely on quite a bit, which is Andy Bichelsheim, our founder and chairman. And he has such deep knowledge in almost everything I've ever spoken to him about that that's a great source of information as well. Just a 1-hour chat with him every few days. There's so much to learn. I do rely quite a bit on that as well. But I think the customers, some of our suppliers, Andy, some of the team members that are talking to customers combined, and then reading industry news really does help me stay up to date as much as I can. There's still so much to catch up to.
It sounds like it. So what books are you reading? What podcasts are you consuming, both professionally, personally?
Sorry, what was the question?
Your podcasts, books.
Sure.
What are you, and personal as well? What are you listening to? What are you reading? What's keeping your mind busy outside of work, inside work?
So a couple of things. One, I read the Wall Street Journal quite a bit, and I find it to be a great source of information. It's a good mix of business, technology, world events, politics, economics, everything added together. And I find that we are a little bit less biased than some of the other media organizations. I'm reading this book, Good to Great. I'm actually reading it the second time. I read it many, many years ago. But Good to Great by Jim Collins talks about how companies need to build a foundation that's long-lasting. And it's not a one-time thing. How do you build a leadership structure? How do you build an organizational structure? How do you build processes? And sort of into the DNA of the company so that it can survive any one individual or a couple of individuals. And it's a great refresher of why some companies in the world have lasted a long time and have always succeeded, whereas others are like a one-trick show. They're great for one generation or something, and then suddenly the company collapses. And there's a stark difference, and essentially leadership and how these companies are structured, or the people there. So that's my current reading list going on.
Interesting. So what kind of questions do you like to be answered? Or what kind of questions do people usually ask you when they find out your leading role in this space?
Yeah, so last few years, it was only about supply chain. Fortunately, that discussion has died down a little bit. But the most interesting questions are always about roadmap and technology. Where is the world headed? And we talk about 800 gig, but 800 gig at a high level sounds great. This is some next generation speed is coming. But when you go into the details, there's a lot more specifics in technology, in the hardware, in the software stack, in automation that we're doing. Some of our large enterprise customers talk about Cloud Vision, which is our automation platform for enterprises. And over the last few years, almost if you have a 1-hour discussion with anyone in the network world, out of the 60 minutes, we spent 55 minutes just on automation. Because that is how you touch and feel the network. Yes, there's more underneath, but there's a lot that happens there. So it's all about technology and roadmap, I would say, are my favorite things to discuss.
So we talked about your favorite questions. What about the questions you don't like to answer?
I don't think I have any specific areas or anything like that I don't like to answer. Haven't come across that just yet, so it's been okay.
You're an open book. All right, all right. So soft skills are just as important in becoming a tech leader as hard skills. What skills did you have to personally develop in your career journey?
Yeah, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a computer science engineer, a programmer, and that's how my career started. But over time, you had asked me an earlier question as well, what influenced me towards success. One of the areas was I got involved with a lot of customer escalations early on. It was coincidental. Our product was having some issues, and we needed an engineering manager to go drive that. And a lot of the escalations started coming directly to me and to my team at that point. And the ability to have a holistic discussion where you might be thinking, this is a troubleshooting call, but it's also a soft selling call. You're not forcing the customer to buy your product, but if you do a good job, there's an implied message. If we're doing a good job for you, could you please continue to buy our products, or here's the next generation upgrade, and so on. And that soft selling, I think, is extremely important in all of our jobs. That's something I've had to learn over time, but I've enjoyed it. The intercommunication in leading teams, seeing, I would say, false alignment within teams is extremely important.
What was that?
False alignment in teams. What happens
False alignment in teams.
What happens is, when you have organizations and there's a mission or a goal you're chasing, top down, here's what you need to go do. And in big meetings or public discussions and so on, everyone just agrees. But behind the scenes, they actually don't agree. There's unrest, there's some discontent, there's some disagreement. And being able to read that and address that is extremely important. Otherwise, the teams will not achieve the goal you're hoping for, or they won't achieve it as efficiently as you're hoping for. And I think leading teams from an organizational standpoint, that's an extremely important skill to have as well, to understand, being able to emotionally connect with people, to understand what they're actually thinking, despite what they're saying, and addressing those issues so that you get the outcome you want. So these are some of the soft skills I've learned over time. I've enjoyed that quite a bit as well, but I think there's still a long way to go.
That's so interesting, and it's so true, and it's something that is out there, but we don't talk about, right? And so I enjoy that false alignment, something that we need to be aware of in growing professionally and assembling these teams. So what skills are you still working on? What do you still kind of have to go back to the drawing board about?
Well, on the soft skills, you're never done.
Yes.
There's always more to do. When you're addressing audiences, there's always different themes you want to focus on. And you can take it many, many different directions. I've been trying to add humor to some of my presentations, at least inside the company, because then you're a little bit less worried about who can get offended.
What does that mean, though, when you say I add humor? Do you come with jokes? Do you just have a lighter attitude? What does that mean?
As an example, you talked about how do you deal with success. And one of the things we do at Arista is we actually send each other sort of jokes or poetries with rhyming words, but all tied to technology, and making fun of each other, at the right time. It's a light moment to enjoy. In some of my presentations inside the company, I've managed to add quite a bit of jokes or poking fun at either people in the team or myself, or getting my family involved in photos and whatnot. And it really helps to lighten the mood while you're delivering a serious message. So those are some things I've been working on. I think it's coming along okay, and I'm enjoying that quite a bit.
So as you mentioned before, a lot about team building, teamwork, innovation requires excellent teamwork. What advice would you have for a community on how to create and assemble teams, strong teams?
Teamwork is a complex topic. It's been studied by the Harvard Business School, by leadership organizations, by management organizations, and so on. But there are certain aspects of teamwork that are extremely important. Number one, if you're involved with a team or you're leading a team, you need to be an authentic leader. By that, what I mean is what you're saying is what you're doing yourself. And if you don't, you'll get a lot of discontent in the team, and they're actually not going to be delivering what you're thinking of the goals. Second, when you have a team of strong people, there will be disagreements. So having an open forum to discuss these disagreements, get them out there, and you may not be able to resolve them because we're all strong individuals, and you don't have to agree to everything in the world. But the fact that it's out there and you can talk about it openly clears out the air a lot. Then there are situations where you're under pressure, the team is unable to deliver on goals or behind on milestones. How do you readjust in those situations? It's all extremely important. But when you assemble a good team, you need people that are not necessarily like-minded, but focused and committed towards achieving those goals, whether it's a project and a schedule or a new area of development or anything you're trying to take on, even as a non-profit activity or a community activity. But that alignment is extremely important.
I would agree. So what traits do you look for specifically when hiring team members?
It's often said that one of the most important jobs as a manager or leader is hiring. And it is quite true, because if you can hire a great team, then a lot of things get addressed, and you get better outcomes. The kind of skills I personally look for, as well as what I've experienced the last 15, 20 years, is I'm looking for individuals with a strong work ethic. And that doesn't mean that you're going to slog it all out and work 16 hours a day. But you're looking for a strong work ethic at the right time, when you need to be very focused and dedicated to work. You're in there, present, doing the best that you can. Second is, and then the different aspects for hiring younger people who may not have as much experience versus really experienced people. But in both cases, you need individuals that will either build deep domain skills or already have them. I do not like to hire generalists because you can't really tell as the organization evolves what is their value add. You need specialists or people who can go deep. Now, our industry is quite broad, and every industry is broad. I'm not saying networking is any special. There are other fields that are even more complex. But of all the things that we do, you need to have at least one area where you are the expert or can become an expert. Because when you can do that, that value remains with you throughout your life. And as a result of that, I've seen this with many people, many individuals that have grown either at Arista or at our customers or other organizations, where they're truly amongst the best in their field, and they're valued significantly more and respected more in the industry compared to where they would be. But that's really the two skills: strong work ethic and some kind of domain expertise, or the capability to build it if you are starting younger.
According to an August 2023 article by SDX Central, Arista Networks predicted Ethernet will power AI networking and be a significant growth contributor by 2025. Can you talk more about this?
Yeah. One of the hottest debates in the world of networking lately with AI has been InfiniBand versus Ethernet. InfiniBand is a technology that's been with us for over 20 years, and pre-AI, it was largely viewed as an HPC technology for some top supercomputers or clusters in the world, mostly in labs or other HPC areas. But with the advent of AI, there's a lot of InfiniBand clusters out there as well. So there's a lot of interest from the community, including our investors, on where is the world headed on Ethernet. And what we are seeing from some of our largest customers is everyone wants a standardized solution. Everyone wants something that is multi-vendor, that can interoperate and delivers the efficiency you need for AI clusters. But the perfect solution might not be there today. So as a result of that, there's a lot happening in the Ethernet space. Already there are products deployed by many of our customers today in the AI space, but there's more coming in the near future. So the way we are seeing this is, 2022 was a year where there's a lot of product in development. 23, there are a lot more customers using our products in labs or smaller trials and so on. 24, this gets bigger. We already have demand signals from our customers to take these to the next level, and we are seeing some of them in 25 transition to mainstream Ethernet clusters already for large-scale GPU interconnects. Some of this is also related to how, if you look at the shape of the 800 gig market, because 800 gig is coming, 400 gig is based on 50 gig SerDes. So 400 gig is actually 8 different lanes of 50 gig each. 8 times 50 is 400. 800 gig is based on 100 gig lanes, 100 gig SerDes. And 800 gig is starting to get introduced pretty much now or early Q1 in lab trials for very low volume. And as 24 comes, at the end of 24, early 25, these products will start to go into mainstream production. And that's really what's needed for AI as well. So that's really the 800 gig upgrade cycle for AI that we were referring to.
So as a result, Arista Networks is doubling down investment on AI. Can you talk more about your investment in open source Ultra Ethernet Consortium, which officially launched on July 19th of this year?
So if you look at, this goes back to the AI networking aspect. If you look at an ideal solution, if we had to start from scratch, you're on the drawing board and you say, I want to build a perfect solution for AI. The perfect solution involves both the host, the NIC on the host, as well as the network. And we are not going after the GPUs. The GPUs are already doing what they're doing and getting more and more complex and moving fast. So for the networking piece, if you can have the NIC and the network switches and routers partner together and come back with a clean solution, I think the world would be different. Some of it includes things like, how do you handle out-of-order packet delivery? Today, the technology is called RoCE, or RDMA over Converged Ethernet, where you're doing RDMA transport over Ethernet. This has been used for storage networks for the last decade, but AI takes this to the next level. Now you're looking at every delay, every congestion in the network. We built very large-scale leaf-spine designs with something called ECMP, or equal cost multipath routing. And we can scale these really wide. You can go 16-way, 32-way, 256-way ECMP inside a data center today. But what happens if two flows collide and hash to the same link? There are certain solutions to that already. We have technology called DLB, or dynamic load balancing, on one dimension. We have a cell-based fabric on our bigger chassis spine switches as well. But none of them are completely perfect or were designed without partnering with the NIC directly. So now, if you could redo everything from scratch, you come back with a better solution where there's some level of packet spraying that can be done, some level of reassembly that can be done, some level of signaling on congestion and congestion management that can be done, which, again, it doesn't exist today. So the industry got together as a group of companies, and we are part of the steering committee for this, along with some of the cloud companies, along with the likes of Broadcom. And the UEC is coming along really well in defining a standard that is multi-vendor, that does interoperate and addresses these kinds of solutions. I would expect these solutions will actually come to the market late 24, early 25, right with those 800 gig products to address some of these needs.
So what are the biggest challenges or risks we are facing, our community specifically, with the developments of AI?
I think in terms of challenges, we talk quite a bit about next-gen speeds and the complexity of the products. But in terms of risks, I think cybersecurity attacks, hackers, ransomware can get significantly more complex, because while AI is available to us to take things to the next level, it's also available to the hackers. And fighting that in real time will require more techniques, more tools, more knobs that don't exist yet. So I think us thinking about those kinds of risks and how to protect ourselves and the community in the future is going to be a major challenge. While governments are working on regulating AI from one dimension, on making sure AI doesn't do bad things, I think it's really on us as a community to make sure AI does good things, and leveraging these tools or technologies and taking them to the next level. Or if you're involved in one of these industries or driving the roadmap for these, I think it's extremely important to focus on that dimension as well before it's too late. Because when it's too late, the hackers have taken it all. We have to get there before them.
So what are your predictions for how AI will influence other aspects of the industry?
I think we touched a little bit on networking already, but I do believe AI will touch every aspect of our life, whether it's automating our individual lives and schedules. We change with smartphones, and the number of apps we all use or dependent on a daily basis has come a long way. But AI takes this to the next level. And this summer we were traveling to some parts of the world with the kids, and we were just contrasting. In some parts of the world, running 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes late is not a big deal. It's almost expected with traffic and other delays and so on. In the US, we look at our apps, Maps app on the phone. You look on Google Maps, and it tells you you'll arrive at 9:57. There's a good chance you'll arrive at 9:57 if you don't take a detour. We're already that dependent on technology to be that precise, but I think that will go a long way in the future as well. How we automate things at home, I think, will come a long way. Now, applying this to work, number one, writing code, I think, is a big deal. It's coming. It's already happening. It's happening a lot in the startup world than big companies, just because of compliance and other rules and issues and so on. But the startup industry has already taken it over, and it will reflect and show up in a very meaningful way in our day-to-day lives as well. So leveraging that again for our day-to-day jobs and adapting that technology as quickly as possible is going to be a big deal.
I think very compelling. So what is our community doing right, and what do we need to improve upon?
This community especially runs the internet. That's how I look at it. And the fact that not only did the internet survive, but it flourished during COVID is a huge testament to how far we have come as a group and have made technology successful in solving many, many problems, whether it was work from home or school from home, or a doctor treating a patient, over a Zoom call, the network and the networking community was fundamental to that success. So I think we're doing a lot of things right. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We love the fact that as a community, we push technology further, but also keep it interoperable, because if it cannot interoperate, you get into these silos, which are disconnected upgrade cycles, because there's nothing smooth. And as we know in networking, it's rare or almost never do you have a green field. It's always a brown field, because you have something and then you need to add to it, but it has to be backwards compatible and forwards compatible. So I think we're doing a good job there, and we need to continue doing that. There's a lot happening, whether it's the routing protocol stack or in the hardware low-level firmware with these large-scale data sets and clusters. I think we'll also have to think about how does this data move all over the world. If you look at some of the cloud companies and the amount of undersea fiber that is being laid out to connect continents together, this is going to be a significant part of the infrastructure the world needs to get to future stages, because you're going to move petabytes of data or exabytes of data across sites. And as a networking community, how do we support that? I think is going to be a big deal as well. So I think the biggest focus, in my view, is how do we handle these large data sets, not small TCP transfer packets only, and across smaller sites, regional sites, across countries, across continents, and keep the world going.
Thank you for that. So AI developments require collaboration and partnerships. What companies do you like?
As I touched on some earlier, we are great partners with companies like Broadcom. We're great partners with companies like Intel and AMD as well on one side. Both Microsoft and Meta are very significant customers and partners of ours as well in helping shape the ecosystem and the direction of our technology, as well as some of our suppliers. And it's already been a great outcome. And there are others in the industry too that may not be the closest partners today, but we absolutely work with them, whether it's the GPU companies or their offload companies. There are many startups in this space that are trying to push their stack as well, and some are doing a reasonably good job. So that ecosystem and the AI space is coming along really well. That's on one dimension. The other one, as I touched on earlier, is applying AI to network operations. And over there, it's more of the classic software companies and deployment companies that are happening. And whether you're deploying on-prem or connected to the cloud, I think there's a lot happening in that space as well.
So Anshul, as we've reached the end, what questions have I not asked you that we should be asking you?
Oh boy, I think we touched on a lot. I think we covered it all, unless the community here wants to know more about AI, which I think we covered in depth. I think you've covered it all. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Anshul, and have a wonderful trip home.
Thank you. Thank you so much.